All right, good afternoon, guys. This is Nitya Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 804. I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is Jim Leyritz. He played for the Yankees. He played with a lot of teams throughout his career, but he made his most mark with the Yankees. He was a catcher, infielder, outfielder. He played everywhere. He won 2 World Series titles with the Yankees, and I'm really looking forward to this interview. First of all, Jim, I just want to say thank you for joining today's show, and how are you and your family doing so far?
No, thanks for having me. We've been very fortunate during this last year and a half to stay COVID free, and uh, we haven't really changed too much. We've been traveling a lot. We've been doing a lot of things, but I think that my wife and I, are very strong on vitamin D, and I
Mhm.
think we've been very, very fortunate that we've been able to get through all this without any problems.
Yeah, so I want to start off with your childhood. And while growing up, when did you start realizing that you wanted to play sports? And before deciding on baseball, did you play any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, so we always had to change the season. So you had to play different sports because there was nothing year round. And I played all the sports: bowling, soccer, tennis. I did a little bit of everything. But once I got to middle school, I played football, basketball, and baseball. But basketball was my number one sport. It was the one sport that I thought I was going to go to college playing. And in eighth grade, I broke my hand playing football, and I missed my basketball season. So I swore off football for high school. And because my dad wouldn't let me drive to school unless I was playing a sport, I ended up playing golf all through high school because that was the only other sport during the fall semester. So it was golf, baseball, and basketball all through high school. And not until my junior year did I realize that I was going to try to go pro playing baseball. Uh, Up until then, I was thinking of the basketball route.
Hmm. So obviously, how important is it for people now, young kids now these days, to play multiple sports? Because I feel like you can get better advantage if you play multiple sports, and it will help you in the long way, whatever sport you decide to choose. How important is it?
I mean, really, it's geographical. It's one of those situations where you do have a change of seasons. Kids have to play different sports. I live out here in California, and I've lived in Florida before. And unfortunately, because the weather's nice all year round, some of these kids only want, and some of their parents only want these kids playing one sport. And as much as I think that's okay when you're 16, 17, 18, and you kind of have an idea on what you want to pursue, whether it's college or whether it's professional. Uh, but up until 16 or 17, I think you should try to do everything you can to be a good athlete, play as many sports as you can. And you know what? A lot of times, if you don't have that desire to even go to college and play a sport, you know what? Just play because you want to hang out with your friends. And that's why I always told. I had three boys, and I always told them the same thing, guys. I know I played baseball. You don't have to. If you want to, that's great. But just play what you want to play and who you want to hang out with. And that was kind of the way that I approached it for my kids.
Hmm. So when you decided to play baseball, and what are some of the things that you learned as a baseball player in high school and college, and what was it like experiencing different positions in baseball, like catching, outfielder, infielder too, and throughout your career?
Yeah, well, I was mainly a catcher growing up because Johnny Bench was one of my idols,
Mhm.
him and Pete Rose, and up until my senior year in high school. And then 4 days before the draft, which I was supposed to be taken in the draft by none other than the Atlanta Braves,
Oh.
um, 3 days before the draft, I ended up breaking or fracturing my foot,
Hmm.
and I couldn't catch any longer. And it took me 3 years for that foot to heal to where I could get back behind the plate. But during those 3 years, I learned to play the outfield. I learned to play third base. I learned to become more versatile. And most of all, people wanted me because I could hit.
Right.
And and that's what kind of I never got drafted. I ended up playing in a collegiate league out in Hayes, Kansas, in the summer of 1985, and I was all of a sudden better to start catching, and I started catching a few games. A Yankee scout saw me catching, and he said, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm able to catch. I just couldn't do it at college because the starting catcher for the college team was the nephew of the coach, so I wasn't going to catch over him."
Hmm.
Um, but long story short, they ended up seeing me play for 3 days. They said, we want to sign you. And before I went back for my senior year, I signed with the New York Yankees.
Wow. Yeah. So when you went through that injury, how tough is it during that process, and what did you learn during the process? How to overcome it? And obviously, you couldn't catch until you got better. And but did you say that injury helped you along the way with your career that you had?
Yeah, it was difficult because, I love Johnny Bench. I wanted to be a catcher. And the Atlanta Braves told my dad specifically, we want him as a catcher. We don't want him as a third baseman outfielder. He can hit and he can catch. There's not too many catchers back in those days that could do both of those things. And that's what we want him as. And they passed on me in the draft. And then, that was difficult. It was like, wow, here was an opportunity. But I never strayed away. My father was the one that taught me very young, set the goal that you want at the very end and to try to achieve that goal and work your way up. And that goal was becoming a Major League Baseball player. And I don't care what happened to me out of high school. I don't care what they told me in junior college, what they told me at Kentucky, what they told me every draft day they wouldn't draft me. I wasn't going to change that goal. And I went out to Hayes, Kansas, and I worked my butt off, and I ended up getting signed. And they want to say the rest is history, but 4 years in the minor leagues, and again, same thing. I was catching, and then all of a sudden they drafted a catcher in the first round, and he had to join our team. Well, guess what, Jimmy Leyritz, you're an undrafted guy. We don't have a whole lot of money in you. You need to go learn to play the outfield again. So I had to go do all those things. But again, sometimes hindsight, we don't see it right away. As my career progressed and I got to the big leagues, the reason I hung around 11 years is I could catch, but I could also play other positions. And that was really, really the versatility that kept me around for 11 years.
Yeah. So how grateful are you that one of the best historic franchises in baseball, the Yankees, gave you the opportunity to start your career? And what was that like? The call? Obviously, back in the day, the calls were different. But for you, what was it like when the Yankees gave you the opportunity to start your career? And what was it like wearing the pinstripes?
Yeah, it was very interesting. There was two teams that were bidding on me in Wichita, Kansas at the time. It was the Jayhawk tournament for the Collegiate League. And the Yankees came first, then the Kansas City Royals came. And of course, in 1985, the Kansas City Royals won the World Series.
Right.
So my father flew out once they found out they were interested. And my father flew out from Cincinnati, and we sat down and we talked. And the Royals and the Yankees were offering me the same amount of money. But the New York Yankees said, we will pay for your school if you want to go back and finish your degree, because I was only one year short. So my mother and my dad talked it over, and my mom said, if they're going to pay for your education, sign with the Yankees. And my dad was like, yeah, you know what? Kansas City just won the World Series. They got a good team. The Yankees aren't very good right now. You might have a chance to go through the system a lot quicker. Let's go ahead and sign with the Yankees. And we did. And like I said, 4 years later, I finally got the call.
Wow. And then so obviously you spent 4 years in the minor league. So in those 4 years, what did you learn as a minor league player to develop your game and the growth of your game? And once you got the call up, what were the main things that you learned in those 4 years?
Well, it was interesting. I had a teammate named Andy Stankiewicz, and Andy played a little bit in the big leagues, but he's a coach at Grand Canyon University right now, a pretty good baseball program. But he was interviewed after I had the 96 home run and a lot of the things that started happening to me. He was interviewed by somebody writing a book, and they said, tell us a little bit about what it was like playing with Jimmy in the minor leagues, because he played with me at every level. And he's like, the interesting thing when I first met Jimmy in single A was that all of us were trying to figure out how to survive single A. And all Jimmy could talk about what he was going to do in the big leagues. And he said he just had that mindset that he didn't care about anything else about getting to the big leagues. And most of us, we're just happy to be playing minor league baseball. That was my attitude. My attitude was, okay, you're going to start me in Double A. I don't want to be here very long. get me out of here as soon as you can. And it rubs some coaches the right way. It rubs some coaches the wrong way, And so I had my battles with some coaches, and it wasn't always easy. But it was one of those things that, I said, I've got a path I believe in. I believe that, I treat everybody with respect, and as long as they treat me with respect, they'll get it in return. But if they disrespect me, I'm going to be the same. So there were some, like I said, there were good times and bad times all the way through those minor leagues, and a lot of learning to realize that, just listen to everything, take everything in, take what you think you need, what you need that will help you, and what you don't think will help you. Just be polite about it and say thank you, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I think that's what I learned throughout those 4 years, finally getting to the big leagues, and then realizing, because you're going to have a different hitting coach every time you change levels. You had a different hitting coach every time you change teams. So if you could take just a little bits and pieces from each one, you could become successful. Not one person from any level knew everything. It's just a matter of what could help you.
So when you get the call up, what goes through your mind when you walk into the clubhouse and you see a roster of Mark Leiter, Lance McCullers Sr., Dave Righetti, and you play with Deion Sanders too, which was amazing, and also you play with. I had to pull up the roster real quick, but what was it like just seeing going into the clubhouse and seeing that talent of players?
Well, in 1990, I got to go to spring training, and at that time, Bucky Dent was the manager. And as I mentioned before, I had some trouble with some coaches in the minor leagues. Bucky was one of them. And of course, I had a great spring training. And the last day of camp, he calls me in the office and tells me he's sending me down. And I was a little ticked off, and I knew that had a little bit to do with what took place 3 years earlier. But I took it with stride. And sure enough, Bucky Dent got fired on June 4th, and I got called up on June 6th.
Oh, wow.
And Stump Merrill was the manager at the time. We were playing a doubleheader in Toledo, Ohio. Rick Downs was our manager, and I went 0 for 6 in the doubleheader, was ticked off, was throwing my helmet, and Rick Downs called me in the office, and I came in there, sat down on the couch, and waited for him to start yelling at me because for having a bad attitude. And he goes, he said, hold on a second. He left the room. He came back in. And when he came back in, he came in with Alan Mills.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And the next thing he did is he sat down and he said, guys, I've never done this before. It's the first time, but I'm sending you guys to the big leagues. You're leaving for Baltimore tomorrow. The Yankees are in Baltimore. So we were in Toledo. So Alan Mills and I got in our car and drove from Toledo to Columbus to get all of our belongings, and the next day fly out to Baltimore. We got into Baltimore. We missed batting practice. So, but I knew some of the guys from spring training, Steve Sachs, Dave LaPointe. Yeah. Those were guys that I kind of hung out with in spring training. I see those guys. I say hello. I see Mattingly. I see all the names. And Buck Showalter comes up to me and, congratulates me. And he says, hey, listen, I know you're tired. It's been a long day, but just be ready because Stump likes to throw guys in the first day that they're here. And don't be surprised if you get a call on to pinch hit or come in the game. So the game's going on. I think we were losing 1-0, and all of a sudden we get to the 8th inning, and Buck Showalter says, "Hey, get loose." So I'm in the clubhouse stretching, and all of a sudden I see on the TV a guy named Greg Olson for Baltimore warming up in the bullpen. Now at that time, Greg Olson was there, Mariano Rivera, and at this point in June, he was 13 for 13 in saves.
Wow.
And he was a right-hander. So I pretty much mentally said, oh, there's no way that he's going to pinch hit me against this guy. Well, sure enough, Steve Sachs is up to bat, and Wayne Tollis is on deck. And all of a sudden, Stump, hey, Leyritz. He said, get on deck. If Sachs gets on base, because there was 2 outs, He said, if Sachs gets on base, you're hitting
Hmm.
for Tollison. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So I get up there and I'm thinking, I don't want to face this guy. I mean, my first big league at bat off this guy. So sure enough, Sachs gets on base and I go up to face Greg Olson. And he has that nasty curveball, which was his big pitch. He throws it the first pitch. I swing at it. It bounces like 56 feet and goes to the backstop. Sachs gets the second base. And, I get back in the box, throws me another one. I swing at it. I miss. Then he threw a fastball away. Then he throws me a third curveball. And I just barely hit a line drive down the first base line, foul ball. But I was like, okay, at least I made contact.
Hmm.
Next pitch, he throws another hanging curveball. I get a base hit between second and third. Steve Sachs scores the tying run, and I'm on first base. And Randy Milligan was the first baseman. He gets the ball and he hands it to me. Says, "Congratulations, kid. First AB, you hit your first RBI, and you tied the game up." And then we get to the ninth inning, the bottom of the ninth, and they load the bases. And I get a line drive hit to me at third base. I make the play, but I get up to throw it home, and I one-hop Matt Noakes at home. He misses it, and we lose the game 2-1. And I had the best of the days and the worst of the days all in one.
Oh, that's great. That's a crazy story right there. And
Oh, yeah.
I almost forgot about you played with Don Mattingly, Jesse Barfield, Dave Winfield, Hensley Mullins, great guys and obviously great players. And if you look at the roster, it's amazing. But this is a two-part question. And obviously, your first World Series title was in 1996. Taking back to that, and the next part to this question, what was it like catching a pitcher like David Cone?
Yeah, well, the first part is 96. I mean, it was great. I wasn't sure I was coming back at the beginning of 96 if Showalter was the manager, but then Buck got fired.
Yeah.
And once he got fired, my agents were very good friends with Mr. Steinbrenner and Mr. Torrey. And they said, if Jimmy comes back, can you guarantee him 400 at bats? Or if you can't, please give him an opportunity to go elsewhere. And Torrey said, no, listen, he's going to catch Pettit, just like he did in 95. And, because he can play first base, he can play third base, he can play the outfield. I can get him 400 at bats. So we re-signed, and I became Pettit's personal catcher still.
Wow.
And, the season started, and we had a great season that year. I think Andy and I went 19-7. Girardi caught him, I think maybe 6 starts. When there was a tough left-hander on the mound, they wanted another right-handed bat in the lineup, so Girardi caught him. But no, we had a great season. It was one of those situations where so many different things happened that year. Getting Doc Gooden back from his rehab, getting Darryl Strawberry back from his rehab, and then probably the biggest shot in the arm that we got in 1996 was also the worst moment of 1996 when David Cone was diagnosed in April with an aneurysm. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure he would ever come back. And then he gets sent back to us in June after having successful surgery. He comes back in June, and the first game he comes back and pitches in Oakland, takes a no-hitter into the 6th inning.
Wow.
And it just gave us that shot in the arm that said, hey, if this guy can come back from this, we got to keep pushing. And sure enough, we went on and we ended up getting to the World Series. A couple tough series against, I think it was Texas and Baltimore. And then, of course, the Atlanta Braves losing the first 2 games, almost a complete embarrassment to Mr. Steinbrenner. And of course, us. And George getting ready to fire everybody and get rid of Torrey and, all these things. We go to Atlanta and, Coney pitches a great game 5. Bernie Williams hits a big home run. We win that game. But then all of a sudden we came out game 4 and we were down 6-0 right away. And, we were like with John Smoltz, with Glavine, with Maddox, right. The next three day starters. If we lose this game, we're done. There's no way we can win because we would have been down 3-1. And they bring in Mark Wohlers. And I can remember in the dugout looking at Pat Kelly and going, at least we didn't get swept because Mark Wohlers was there, Mariano Rivera. Mm-hmm. And he had just closed out the 95 World Series for the Braves. we didn't think we had a chance. And we thought we had a chance against Pilecki, and then Tino got struck out, and so did Paul O'Neill to end that inning. And then really the best thing that happened to us was that Bobby Cox started Wohlers in the eighth, and Charlie Hayes gets the miracle hit down the third baseline that stays fair. Darryl Strawberry gets a huge base hit. And then, of course, Mariano Duncan looks like he hits into a double play, and they boot it, and they only get one out. And then I come up against Wohlers, and, the 2-2 count he hangs a slider, which is the last pitch I would think that he would throw, but he hung it, and I hit it out. And, all I could think about running around the bases was, if we win this game and the World Series, that it won't be this home run will not be a footnote like the 95 home run against the Mariners in the playoff, right, the walk-off in the 15th inning, like that one became. We need to win this game. And sure enough, Boggsy gets the walk. We win in extra innings. I catch Pettit the next night. We win 1-0. Probably the greatest game I've ever been a part of. And then we win game 6 at home, and we have the celebration, and then we have the parade. And after being on a team that lost 95 games in 90, 93 games in 91, to be on that pinnacle and win, and to have 4.5 million people at Times Square and celebrating our victory, it was a pretty special moment.
Yeah, I'm just curious for yourself, being a catcher. Some of these pitchers like to pitch their own game, and for example, these aces like Garrett Cole sometimes shakes his head. And for you, how often do you get that from pitchers like Andy Pettit and David Cone?
Well, with David Cone, once in a while you get a couple of shakes, but not too many. What a lot of people don't know is a pitcher and catcher with the pitching coach, they get together before the game, and they talk about how they're going to approach, what hitters the pitchers had some trouble with. So it's already kind of predetermined how we're going to pitch during, before the game even starts. Yeah. But I had a pretty special relationship with Pettit. He had so much confidence because of in 95, when he came up as a rookie, we had such a good rapport together. He had so much confidence in how I called a game, and how he had faith in all 4 of his pitches, that it was almost a running joke with him and I, that I would tell him every now and then, "Hey, Pet, shake it off, because it doesn't look like you're thinking out here." Him and I had such a good rapport. He rarely shook me off. And, he was one of the most pleasurable people to catch. And again, a relationship that we were polar opposites in personality, but yet it gelled together on the field.
So obviously you said that you mentioned Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden, and the bullpen was nasty too for you guys that World Series run. And actually I had Jeff Nelson on the show last month, and he was a great reliever. And what was it like seeing that bullpen go out there and doing their things to help you win that championship?
Well, that's one of the things we always talk about with Mr. Torrey, and what a great job Bob Watson did that over in those 2 years that he was there. If you look back on those rosters, and you say to yourself, okay, if I'm the opposing manager and I'm in the late innings with my own bullpen, and I've got to think about Darryl Strawberry pinch hitting, Tim Raines as a switch hitter pinch hitting, Jim Leyritz from the right side, or Chili Davis from both sides, even during those years, Mr. Torrey couldn't go wrong with the matchup. The other manager, it was a nightmare for him, because no matter who he chose, he was going to face a guy that there was no weakness. And I think that was huge. Now, you go on the other side of the ball, when you go to the relief corps that Mr. Torrey had, and you go, okay, Jeff Nelson can get any right-hander or left-hander out with his funky motion and the way he threw. You got Mike Stanton from the left side. Right. You got Mariano Rivera setting up John Wetland. Again, flip a coin, and your decisions aren't that tough. And I think that was the pleasure. Mr. Torrey will always say, listen, I had a plethora of players to choose from late in the game. I just had to make sure they were available every day when I needed them. And that was the hardest thing he probably had to do, was just to make sure that every player was available during that day.
Yeah, so I want to ask you. You ended your career with the Dodgers, but how tough is it for you throughout your career? You had to move from team to team, but you eventually made it back to the Yankees to win your second title. But I want to ask you though, how tough is it as a player for you as a player just to move from team to team?
Well, I asked for the trade to Anaheim because I wanted a chance to play every day, and Mr. Steinbrenner granted that wish. God rest his soul. That was something that he did not have to do. But after hitting the home run in '96, he's like, "Listen,
Right.
you've done you've cemented yourself here. If they're not going to let you catch every day, we're going to give you the opportunity to go somewhere else." And I enjoyed Anaheim, but that was short lived. And then I went to Texas. But really, the 90, 98, and then 99, I got traded to the Padres, to a team that was going to the World Series.
Right.
In 99, I got traded back to the Yankees with, again, a team going to the World Series. The only trade that I did not want or I was upset about was when I got traded from the Yankees in '99, going into 2000. I'm sorry, in we finished the season in '99. We win the World Series again, and in 2000, halfway through that year, I get traded. That was the only trade that I did not want to happen, because I was hoping to end my career as a Yankee. But Knobloch had the throwing issues, and they needed the Dodgers needed a right-handed bat off the bench that could catch, and that's why I was part of that trade. And then unfortunately got hurt with the Dodgers, and that was it. But no, I mean, the trades, like I said, the two trades, the Anaheim to Texas and the Yankees to Dodgers, those are the only two that I was not happy with. But again, that's baseball, and again, because of my ability to hit in the late innings, in the playoffs and World Series, sometimes I always got traded to a team that was going to the World Series, which always wasn't that bad.
Yeah, so take me back to the reaction when you got traded back to the Yankees, and obviously you played with some of the same teammates that you had in the 1996 roster. And what was it like going back there, winning another title in New York?
Well, yeah, as you know, '98, I was on the Padres and we lost to the Yankees, and but that season, the Padres, because we went on that run that we did and the fans got behind us, they got approval for Petco Park. All right. And everybody to this day thanks that '98 team in San Diego for getting that new ballpark, because I don't think if we wouldn't have had that run, they would have approved the stadium. So that was something to be pretty special to be a part of. And then, of course, we get the stadium, and then they sell off everybody. They trade everybody. Caminiti left, Steve Finley left, Wally Joyner. We all got, and then I get traded back to the Yankees, which I was happy because I was going back to a team and we win the World Series. But it was great to be traded back, because I knew the Yankees were, again, going to the playoffs, and we would get another opportunity to possibly get to the World Series.
All right, this is interesting. I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong, but you also obviously you played with Deion Sanders, a football player, ex-football player too. Did you play with Drew Hansen, another ex-football player too?
I did not play with Drew. No, Drew was in the minor leagues, and never got called up when I was there. But Deion, I started playing with Deion first in Double-A with the Albany Colony Yankees, and then he got called up in '90, and then I joined the team halfway through '90, and we played together for a few months till he left for football in 1990.
Yeah, so obviously you had one World Series under your belt. Obviously you knew it's tough to win another championship, but you knew what to expect going in. So what was your guys' mindset that 1999 year to win the other championship?
Well, it was one of those things. The Yankees had been under, they won in '96, they lost in '97 in the playoff, the one-game playoff to Cleveland, and then they win, like they had the magical season in '98. It was harder in '99 because it was pretty much World Series win or bust.
Yeah.
There was no, just getting to the World Series. We felt like once we got there, we were going to have to win this thing, because the fans and Mr. Steinbrenner wouldn't be happy with anything less than another championship. and that was some pressure. That was some hard pressure to play with. But you know what? We beat a tough. The first round was easy. The second round against the Red Sox was a little tougher, but we ended up winning that series. And then, of course, we sweep the Braves in 4 games. And I get my one at bat in the last game in Game 4, and I hit a home run. And Bob Costas' famous saying, quote that says, "You can send this guy to the resort in the spring and summer. Just make sure he comes back in October." And sure enough, I was able to hit the home run, and it became the last home run of the century. And like I said, just really special moments to be a part of Yankee history.
But Bob Costas was calling that game, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, that's he's one of the best out there when it comes to calling games. And but I want to ask you though, what was it like getting both sides of the rivalry? Obviously, you played a little bit with the Red Sox, and what was it like getting both sides in the AL East battling?
Yeah, it was interesting because the one good thing, it wasn't like with Johnny Damon and some of these other guys that I was a Red Sox one year or Yankee one year, and then all of a sudden became a Red Sox. I had a year in between where I played for 2 teams and then became a Red Sox. So it was funny when I first showed up in Boston at the first press conference, the fans were always joking with me, "Hey, you aren't a Yankee anymore. You're a Red Sox. You've been away from the Yankees for a year." And I think I won them over right away in the press conference by saying, "Listen, I love my time with the Yankees. There's no better fans than the Yankee fans. It was great playing there. But as a kid growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, my memories were of Carlton Fisk's home run against my Reds, my Cincinnati Reds. And I couldn't wait to play my first game in Fenway Park." And I think when I said that, I won the fans over right away in Boston, and they cheered me on. And matter of fact, the day I got traded, I think it was John Valentin and somebody else. They wore my number 13 on their hats because they weren't happy that I got traded. And there were quite a few fans that wore the number 13 jersey to that game that night because they weren't happy that the Red Sox had traded me.
Wow. So now looking back at your career, how grateful are you that you got to play the game that you love, win 2 World Series titles, play with a great organization in New York, and playing with legendary players also, and how grateful are you to be in this position and be able to cover the game now as a different aspect and having your own show called Catching Heat podcast?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a blessing as far as, again, I remember my first Old Timers Day, coming back for the first time, and Jimmy Abbott got introduced before me, and then I got introduced, and Jimmy Abbott and I are standing next to each other, and as they continue the announcements, goes to Reggie Jackson, Phil Rizzuto, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, and all of a sudden Jimmy Abbott looks at me and goes, "What are we doing here?" Listen to those names that they're calling, and we're a part of this history. Isn't this amazing to be part of this Yankee history? And really, that's the truth. As a kid, never being drafted out of Ohio, to have an opportunity just to play and put the pinstripes on, but then also to have a moment in Yankee history that you will be remembered for as one of the top maybe 5 or 6 moments in Yankee history. And then, of course, being part of 2 championship teams, not just one, and just those opportunities to be part of that, to know Mr. Steinbrenner and what he meant to the organization, but really knowing what Mr. Steinbrenner taught us about giving back. Mm-hmm. And using the platform that we were blessed with by being a Yankee, by being a major league ball player, that if we didn't go out after our careers were over and do better for others and give back, then we didn't achieve anything. And honestly, that's that I've been doing since I left the game of baseball. I've been doing some TV and radio. I've been through some good times and some bad times, but I've come back from all of the down times. And you know what? I've been blessed to start a new podcast called Catching Heat with Jim Leyritz on Storic Media. and it's every Wednesday. And you know what? It's just great to be back talking to people, athletes, celebrities who are using their platform that they had from their career to doing something for other people to make other people better. And it's just really an opportunity to share goodness in a world that we live in today with such negativity and things that go on in the world today. Just to be able to do a positive podcast that really shows the good things that are going on in the world. And yeah, like I said, I'm just very blessed to be in the position that I'm in now.
Yeah. So speaking of Jim Abbott, what a great story he is. What was it like being his teammate?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's a special guy, and the handicap was something that he never looked at it being a negative. And I tell people all the time. I was just talking to somebody about him the other day. I played against him when I was a 16-year-old kid, and at 16 years old, and seeing a guy pitching against you with one arm, you kind of think he is at a disadvantage until you actually see him pitch and how good he is. Getting that glove on and getting the glove off, and it took me probably about 5 innings as a 16-year-old kid to realize this kid is not disadvantaged, and he's a hell of a pitcher. And then to be able to see him, 10 years later in the big leagues pitching for us, and then of course having that magical day, the no hitter that he pitched against the Cleveland Indians, to have that special day to be a part of that, was pretty cool to be part of Jimmy Abbott's no hitter.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about your show now. It's obviously I love watching it. I love listening to it. And what do you try and get out of this show, and to try to learn from different athletes and former athletes that come on your show?
Well, basically, I interview athletes and celebrities who've had a lot of success. Some of them may have had a little hiccup like I did, to where they fell from grace and they're working their way back, or they took the success that they had in their career and they went on to create a foundation, a charity, or something where they gave back and made other people's lives better. And in all honesty, when they asked me what kind of show I wanted to do, I didn't want to do just a sports show. There's enough sports shows out there. I wanted to do things that talked about positive things that people do with their platform to do something for other people, not themselves. And honestly, that's what most of my podcasts are about. They're, anywhere from Daryl Strawberry to, we're going to have Garth Brooks coming on, and Travis Tritt, and some of my country music guys that I love, and that I went to spring training with Garth Brooks in the Padres in 1999, and Garth came to spring training with us. He worked out with us, but he wasn't there to be a baseball player. He was there because he was promoting his new charity and foundation that he was starting. Those are the kind of people that I want to interview, that are out there doing something else for somebody, else.
Yeah, so a couple more things here before I let you go. What are your thoughts on this season so far? And the Yankees, obviously, we're struggling again here, and I think that this team is too inconsistent, in my opinion. And 1 week they have a hot streak, the next week they go downfall. What do you think needs to change, and are you concerned about this team?
You know what? It's one of those situations. People say it every year. I mean, people were screaming and yelling in 2019. They wanted Aaron Boone fired the first month of the season. And the Yankees wound up winning 100 games that year.
Yeah.
For me, it's the same thing. As players, we don't really look at the press. We don't look at the media. And I can tell you right now, in that clubhouse, there's been some injuries. There's been some tough things. But you know what? You got the Yankees deal with it. They have the kind of ball club that can turn it around and run off 20 straight wins at any particular time because of the talent that they have. It's just a matter of getting it together and getting it working. And again, because they're so much in the spotlight, it's a continuous grind. And again, the best thing that Aaron Boone does for that team is tell these guys, don't look at the newspaper. Don't read the newspaper. Just come out here every day, do your best, get healthy, and let's just, let's go at it. And I think that's what you're going to see as the season progresses. I think the Yankees are going to be good. I think they're going to be in it at the end. And you know what? There may be a few surprises. Boston may continue to play well. Toronto, with the young kids they have, might be finally starting to turn the corner. It's going to be a tough division, but I think the Yankees and the Yankee fans should be like, hey, we've been here before. We've gotten off to a slow start. Things will start to click in.
So, let me ask you this: if the right opportunity presents itself, would you consider being a manager someday?
I would rather go back to coaching.
Mhm.
I feel as a manager that you have a separation with the players.
Mhm.
As a coach, I'd rather be able to help a guy, to be able to work with them, to be able to help a young kid coming up, and because I was one of those players that even as a catcher, I was always given the young pitcher. The Sterling Hitchcock's, the Andy Pettit's. When I was at Texas, Darren Oliver, the young pitchers that were just coming aboard, trying to work with them and teach them what my experience had given me. I would love to do that as a coach. And I think I would be better suited for that than managing, because I just think with managing, you lose that personal touch with the players, because you're supposed to be the manager. So I would love to go back being a hitting coach, go back being a first base, third base coach, and a catching coach, just something like that. But I would rather do it, because I live in California, with either the first choice is always the Yankees, but second choice and third choice would be the Padres, the Dodgers, or the Angels. So I would be home for an extra 81 days during the baseball season.
So before we get to the last few things, I want to ask you about the Padres. What do you think about this team? Exciting team right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're exciting. They're a team that's they've done a good job of building from within. They had a couple of rough years, which was part of the process. But yeah, what they've been able to do, and like I said, they've had some injuries too, and they haven't been on full cylinder yet. Once these guys get healthy, they're a team that will reckon with the Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants in that division.
And the last few things here, our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George, and we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking and making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So I'll send you that page. You can go check it out. And the last thing,
I would love to, because I actually am on a board out here in California with a project called the Teen Project. And what we do is we rescue sexually trafficked girls that are on the streets, most of them that have timed out of the foster care system, that have nowhere to go. We provide housing, education, work, and an opportunity to get clean. We have a couple of rehab centers that help these girls get clean. And I would be very interested in hearing some stuff about the human trafficking.
And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers?
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing opportunity for these people, and what they did and how they sacrificed during this pandemic. A buddy of mine, we developed a podcast just for fun. It was just basically all the people that we knew on Facebook and all the people that I knew on Twitter, and we did a podcast. We did a 3-hour show on every Wednesday and every Saturday to raise money for the frontline workers in New York. And we raised over $50,000 in a 6-week period because we want to deliver meals to them, because they were so busy that they didn't even have time to eat. That we were able to do this. And yeah, I just want to say, Memorial Day just passed. Thank you to those people who gave their lives, who gave for our country, but also let's remember to give our frontline workers the credit that they do, because they got us through this pandemic by sacrificing their time, their efforts, and some of them even their lives. So we owe them a big thank you.
Yeah, well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 804 with Jim Leyritz. He's a former catcher, outfielder, infielder, won 2 World Series titles with the Yankees, and he has a show called Catching Heat. Go check him out on all social media formats. He has a great show, and he had a great MLB career. And thank you again for coming on the show. It's truly an honor, and you and your family stay safe. And we would like to have you back as a returning guest at some point so you can meet the full team.
Now that sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.